Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
State-of-the-art Japanese animation.
So Madoka Magica is what we all watched. I watched this for the first time in
right now.
No.
Okay, good.
No. In 2013 from the record on the recommendation of the drummer Necromancer. And I thought it was great. And I rewatched it a couple years later. But it's been a little bit. And I went a little above and beyond and watched the Rebellion movie last night as well.
Dang, nice. Right after?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I thought about rewatching, trying to get into all the other Madoka Magicas after this one, because it was such an easy watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know we're not talking about Rebellion, so I won't talk about it either. But just to say that I thought it was truly great. It was definitely worth watching for all fans of the TV show. It completely reframes the TV show in a very interesting way.
Oh, cool.
It's really it's like a little slice of artistic genius right here. It's just truly great. So I recommend it.
Does it have the same witch aesthetic?
Yes, it's got similar visual aesthetic. Yeah. And they definitely pump up the fight scenes, because in the sense, it's a movie. They clearly have the resources and the focus to really inflate the fight scenes. So it never looked, Madoka Magica never looked better than this movie.
Dang.
But what's really great about the movie is not necessarily the art, but the theme and the storytelling. Yeah, it's just really fantastic.
There's four movies, right, that retell the story.
So the first two movies retell the TV show.
Okay.
The third movie is the sequel to the TV show, and which I was skeptical of. That's why I hadn't ever watched the movie, because I think the TV show ends relatively perfectly. So I was like, what else is there to really say about this? Apparently there's a lot to say about this, because the sequel movie is fucking fantastic and is a perfect follow-up to the TV show. And then there's a fourth movie in production that is supposed to be the sequel of the sequel, I guess.
I know there's a bunch of spin-off animes, like TV series of not the main characters, but like characters in the same world.
Right.
Yeah, and I think when based on the ending of the TV show, I didn't necessarily see why that didn't make sense to me, or like why does this matter? Who cares? But the movie, I think, really leaves a good open door to all sorts of different directions and all sorts of spin-offs and other segments of the story and of the world. Yeah. So I think the movie's kind of essential viewing as well, now that I've seen it.
Now I've got to watch the movie.
Yeah, I feel like now I do as well. I watched this probably like 2015, 2016. When you watch enough anime, you get recommended it from other anime that you've watched. So just happened to stumble across it. And I think I probably researched it beforehand before I started watching it. So I was like really kind of everyone, the hype around Madoka Magica back then was so extreme. I feel like everyone was praising it for being what it is, which like I think I was really harsh on it the first time I watched it. But now in my older brain, I think it's really cool. I think I just really, really just don't like the witch aesthetic, like all of the like experimental drawings and animation styles and stuff, like the world that they get, that they like defeat the witches in. Just literally not my cup of tea art style wise at all.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that, because I feel like there's a lot of similarities to how the Monogatari series has that kind of experimental animation.
Yeah. So Shaft is the one that is the studio that animated this, and you can tell that it's a Shaft animation because of the world that Shaft built that isn't the witches. So their normal like utopia world, that is extremely Shaft. It's not even funny. Like,
yeah, and that really stood out to me as I was rewatching it this time. Now that I've seen most of the Bakemonogatari stuff, I was like, oh dude, this is so Shaft.
I was like, shit, this is so Shaft right now. And then Homura, all she does is flip her hair and tilts her head, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, I love this. But really don't like the witch. Like, it's like it's like angsty 13-year-old, which I get. They're like, what, they're in high school or middle school or whatever. It's like angsty 13-year-old girl, goth girl art. I don't know. Like,
well,
I feel like
it's a little more complex than that, because it's a throwback to surrealist animation in the 60s. There's a guy named Jan Svankmajer who I was deeply inspired by, who has animation styles like this. Yeah, and her Brothers Quay is another big animation collaboration. They worked on the 9 Inch Nails videos. But yeah, like that stop motion sort of paper animation rather, is a whole genre within itself, the avant-garde animation. So yeah, I can see how it gets so jarring to see that next to like Japanese 2D animation.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily the style that it was animated in, but it was just the imagery and like the aesthetic of the imagery,
like the wheels and like the sort of like festival,
like circusy kind of
vibe.
Like doll, like not like doll like baby doll, but like doll like stitching and stuff. I don't know.
But that's really a staple of that animation, surrealist animation. Well, I'll send you some links to that. We should watch it while we talk about it.
That's cool. I had no idea.
Wait. So, Christella, have you seen it before?
Madoka?
Yeah, before this.
Actually, I just watched it in May, I want to say.
This year?
For the first time. Yeah.
Wow, a fresh one.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Very cool.
Let me give a cool shout out to y'all, because the only reason why I watched this is because I was listening to y'all's episode on Wonder Egg, and somebody was talking about how Madoka Magica is like a deconstructionist magical girl anime, and I was like, oh, what? What
did I say? I was like, I need to really re-listen to that episode before we start so I can remember what I said about it. But yeah, yes, deconstruction of the magical girl genre. It was because, most magical girl shows are like Cardcaptor Sakura, like the girl is like presented with this magic that she has no idea about, and then decides to transform to fight this evil that's like doing harm to whatever her town or whatever she cares about. And then she goes through a transformation sequence, and then she uses the weapons to defeat the big bad. But like this one was like magical girls against magical girls, like the no holds barred cage match. Like it wasn't about like it's somewhat about the big bad, but I mean, I guess we'll get more into it, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always heard the hype of it, and I think I did attempt to watch it a couple of years ago when Dan recommended it to me, and I think I got like 2 or 3 episodes in, and then I just was really turned off by the art style again because it was so like isolating. but I don't know. This happens to me with anime. I'm not in a mood for an art style for a couple of years, and then I come back to it, and it's like, oh, this is no problem.
I think I was really there's this brand of like not anime characters but Sanrio characters from the branch of Sanrio that's called San X, and they're usually like alternative characters. They're not like cutesy and Hello Kitty-ish, but they're like more dark. And there's like a one called Sentimental Circus that has like a ton of like circusy looking things that's really cute. And I was really into that for a period of time. I was really into it. I got a bunch of stuff from the crane machines in Japan when I went, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cute. And then I think I got over that part of my life, and then I watched Madoka, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going back in time, man. But
Yeah, I was not watching anime when this came out, so just went over my head completely.
oh.
So I remember the art, seeing images of it, because I wasn't like completely out of the anime world. Like I was paying attention, but I wasn't watching things, if that makes sense. So to go back, it's sort of like, yes, this is I'm going back and like watching things that that I should have watched if I were still into the scene, if you will.
So this was your first time watching Madoka?
Yeah.
Ooh.
First time.
Ooh, cool.
Ooh, two freshies to teachers. Is that what we're gonna call ourselves? Dan,
Yeah.
I mean, even like the Madoka style of like the way that like the girls are drawn is very, I feel like, different for anime.
Absolutely.
Like it's not like cutesy I mean, I guess it is technically like moe, but there's nothing that's like harshly dark. And I think that's like contrasting with the witch world where everything is like very contrasted. Yeah. So like the art style that the girls are drawn in are very weird for anime. I feel like it's hard to get used to. Because when I went back to watch, I was like, do they really look like this?
Squashed faces. That's the squashed like, art style of the faces.
Even like the hash marks in their eyes, instead of doing like a harsh black for like a pupil, they're just like lined with, and then like have like a shadow. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird to me.
So I think Madoka Magica, part of what makes it so interesting is its historical context. So it's interesting to watch it now compared to watching it back in the day. And granted, I didn't watch it until a couple of years after it come out as well, if I understand this right. But I think, and maybe one of us or somebody listening to this can argue the opposite point, and I'd be curious to hear it. But I think Madoka Magica is the first time that we see cute moe girls having like hyper realistic brutality and kind of like practical carnage happening to them. You know, the first time that we see cute anime aesthetic juxtaposed with psychological trauma and with like hyper realistic violence. And while it works well as a deconstruction of magical girl shows, and I get that, like, that's the popular calling card for this show, and that is, you know, what it's doing, but I also think that it's so crazy influential in a way that it doesn't seem to get enough accolade for. Like, if anything, I would say the show is underrated, because I think Madoka Magica is a turning point that informs so much modern anime. Like, I don't think, like, after Madoka Magica, every magical girl show has some kind of edgy philosophical bent to it. I don't think you could have something like Flip Flappers or Wonder Egg Priority, or even something like Starlight Review without having Madoka Magica. And I also don't think, I mean, Madoka Magica also is like the jumping off point for cute things having like hyper realistic suffering and challenges in the story. And that's a commonplace thing now. Like, you certainly don't have Made in Abyss without having Madoka Magica opening the door to that idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good argument.
And I don't know. Like, I feel like Madoka Magica is the first show to really bring this stuff to the table. I can't think of anything from before.
There's Princess Tutu that's not really a fighting magical girl anime, but it has that philosophical parallel with literature and sort of like the seeking deeper thought knowledge.
Okay.
I haven't watched all of it, but it definitely predates it. And then there's Cutie Honey as well, which not as bloody, but a lot of people forget Cutie Honey is a magical girl show. And it's the first fighting magical girl show. Which it's like the 70s, you know?
Yeah.
Predates
And I guess
30, 40
Revolutionary
years.
Girl Utina also from Magical Girl with philosophical edge to it.
But those aren't moe.
Yeah, true.
They're not cute, right?
Oh,
It's that moe aesthetic.
yeah.
Well, rewatching it this time did make me feel like, man, I got to sit down and watch Sailor Moon, watch Cardcaptor Sakura.
No,
watch
Sakura
all
first. Sakura first.
Okay, watch Cardcaptor Sakura,
Okay,
watch
there we
Sailor
go.
Moon,
Yes.
watch all this magical girl stuff that has traditionally not really been to my interest, but now I feel like, I should really strive to understand this stuff better as part of my beloved medium of anime.
Yeah, and that begs the question: do you guys think that without that context, like if you just watch this show without watching any other magical girl show, would it have the same impact? Would it have the same like relevancy?
I mean, as someone who doesn't really watch magical girl anime, I don't think so. I mean, I've seen like clips of Sailor Moon, but I've never watched a full magical girl show before Madoka.
Same.
Really? Both of you?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So,
And I've watched other magical girl shows since Madoka. I watched Revolutionary Girl Utina. Does that count? But yeah, Madoka was definitely my first magical girl show, and it hit me full on. I thought it was amazing from the jump. Yeah.
I think as someone who like is coming from like a battle shonen viewership, this is a great introduction to the genre, even though it is very subversive.
Yeah.
Because it does explore darker themes.
Yeah, because as you're watching the show, you're like, okay, well these are the tropes you've seen over and over again, and the fact that the idea that like, okay, that magical girls are usually aimed towards a female young audience, and this is aimed towards a more mature adult audience. So that subversion too is like, all right, now you can kind of appreciate that more. Like I watched Sailor Moon as a teenager. I'm not a girl, but I still feel like a soft spot for that show. You know what I mean? And this is totally the opposite in terms of like the tone and how violent it can be. Totally different.
Yeah, I've watched a bunch of magical girl shows before watching Madoka, but as soon as I saw Madoka, I was like, oh, this is better. This is it. This is the kind of like magical girl setting that I am drawn to, because I feel like other magical girl shows, like especially Cardcaptor Sakura, she's just fighting for good. You know what I mean? She's fighting to better her town, to better the people around her, and just to be a good person, which like they are kind of doing in Madoka as well. But like with Madoka, the themes that they explore are so much deeper and darker that I'm just like ultimately more drawn to that, because there's like, it seems like there's actual real struggle, not just like a girl fighting a monster. You know what I mean? Like the girls are going through things that shape who they are going to be as people, you know? As like the mom was saying, like you need to fall and make mistakes now while you're young, so you know how to deal with that when you get older.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that that little talk. That was a good
Mhm.
talk.
Instead of growing up in like this happy, everything's nice and roses, and nothing bad ever happens, and then something bad happening in your adulthood and not knowing how to handle that, I feel like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's important to point out that it is 10 years. This is a 10-year anniversary for the show.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I think it's important. I guess we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
And we have a whole paper that we needed to read.
Yeah.
So apparently,
dissect
wait,
it.
Christella, apparently your MO is having papers for people to read. Because I said I was prefacing the episode with like, I want to bring Christella on again. Like, what should we do? And I was just like, I'll just see what Christella wants to do. Like, whatever she wants to talk about, we'll talk about. And I went back to Dan. I was like, Dan, Christella has some kind of like smarty pants paper to read too. And it was like, oh, yep, that sounds like Christella. Always got some journal to read.
Yeah. So in my previous student life, I used to be a music student, and I was really interested in exploring academic journals of like music analysis and like trying to talk about it to my punk friends. And that was an interesting endeavor. I think one time I wrote like an analysis of like some doom metal album.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I'm always kind of fascinated by like bridging the divide between ivory tower academics and the people who actually consume this shit. So in my ever enduring academic snobbery, I was looking for like, do people talk about anime in the academic community? And it turns out, yes, they do.
Yeah, where did you find this journal?
Okay, so
did you do some intense Googling?
Kind of. I kind of did some intense Googling, but there were some pretty good like top results. So I found this journal through anime. What is it? This website called animemangastudies.com.
Okay.
And it's like a blog type website where they just kind of list like, here are all the journals where you can find articles about anime and like academic discourse about anime. And a lot of the journals are like animation journals, comic journals, film study journals. There's also like gender studies journals that kind of talks about just Japanese pop culture, tons of Asian studies journals, pop culture journals, and science fiction journals. A couple of them that stood out to me was the International Journal of Comic Art, which has been going for a long time, and they're pretty like they're pretty instrumental in introducing like an English language journal introducing the topic of Japanese comics in their writing. And then there's also another journal called Phoenix Papers, a journal of fandom and neo-media studies. And the sponsor is the parent company of Acon. And all the papers in there are from like the academic track of Acon.
Like the convention?
Like the convention.
Wow, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's all of those. Then there's two that are kind of like stand out, like the top. One is Macadamia, and
Dan lit up there.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's been going since 2006, and it's more of like they publish their journal as more of a book series rather than an academic journal, but they talk about they have some translations of Japanese criticism. They have photo essays and interviews. So it's not just academic writing. And some of their recent articles are more about like transnational fandom, queer issues in Japanese pop culture. There's a call for papers that's just science fiction. And this journal that we're going to talk about is the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies. This is from their inaugural issue. It was issued last year in 2020, and it's like a kind of like an offshoot from this this guy's like master project, his master capstone, and it's peer reviewed, it's open source, and it's hosted by the University of Illinois. So it's pretty cool. It's like it's the editor-in-chief is a law librarian who works at Emory University, and Crunchyroll interviewed him this past
Ooh.
March. So it's like kind of getting some traction. The whole point of the journal is to like talk about anime, manga, cosplay, and fandom studies. And it's interdisciplinary. So it's like tries to discourage jargon, which is going to be funny when we talk about this paper. Like, and it's guidelines, they tell you not to put a bunch of jargon in your paper.
Oh,
I don't know if they succeeded with that. Didn't they?
So that's where I found this article from. The journal is great. It's got a lot of modern stuff. The journal's articles has an article on Spice and Wolf. It's got an article about the history of yaoi distribution in the U.S. That was pretty cool read. I think there's like 8 other articles in there.
and we'll post links to all of this in the Discord in case any of you guys want to check this stuff out.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so I thought the Madoka Magica article was really interesting. Sounds like other people didn't like it as much as I did, but I thought it was pretty compelling. And a lot of these points I kind of figured out on my own, but some of them I did not gather on my own. You know, kind of the way that it framed the city and their setting as feeding the mood of like, oh, you know, they live in this like kind of weirdly utopian, you know, slightly technologically advanced, you know, comfortable middle class lifestyle, and that adds to the ambiance of how they view their lives and view, you know, how we as the viewer also view their lives, and how, you know, when they become magical girls, they carry on the idealistic view of their kind of utopian city they live in, and you know that informs how witches have to create these labyrinths and weird out of the way places because there's no place for negativity to exist in this weird utopian, you know, cityscape. And then the magical girls, you know, get caught in the psychological trauma, and I just didn't place the same kind of importance on, you know, I recognize that like, wow, you know, the place that they live in is kind of, you know, has a little bit of technological advancement to it, and it's very, very clean. And as I watched it this time around, I thought, well, it's very Shaftian, isn't it? Right.
Very
the same way
Shafty.
Bakemono, the same way the Monogatari stuff eschews big crowds or dense urban spaces. You know, Madoka does this as well. There is very rare that you see a big crowd of people. It's very rare that you see like dense city living. Everything is very clean and clean cut. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
I think I noticed it more in this watch with the desks, because the desks somehow come out of the floor.
Yeah.
And like say the student's name on it if they're absent. And I was like, what is this? This is weird. I didn't realize all of like the technological advances that they were living with just like day to day. But I guess like you can kind of tell when with Madoka's house and how her house is laid out, and the things that she has in her house, because it's like all automated.
Yeah, to quote the journal, he writes, they write, it was an eco-technocratic city where solar panels, wind turbines, canals, green spaces, and classrooms equipped with electronic blackboards and automatic folding chairs coexisted in harmony. It's like, whoa, okay. see we're going with that, like the whole neo noir lens that they're looking at this show through.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the writer of this paper, his name is Leo Chu. Their name, let's use they. Yeah, their name is Leo Chu, and they work as a research assistant for the Department of Geology and the University of Taiwan. And they don't have like an art analysis background, but I think what's really interesting about their interpretation or their lens of Madoka comes from like a society level, kind of geological level, and like kind of like
Mhm.
inner workings from that. So
Mhm.
in this paper, a lot of the themes that they talk about alongside like rehashing the entire series is how neo-noir Madoka is and compares it to other neo-noir pieces like what is it, the Onion Man or the Onion Field in Blade Runner.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so this whole backdrop, this like utopian backdrop also is like pretty cold and isolating and alienating, this in the same way that a lot of neo-noir pieces can be as well.
Mhm.
I think what's cool about the setting too is that it has this duality of existing in this nice middle class space, juxtaposed against like where the witches dwell.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's always dark and
Yeah.
like dank. You kind of like feel that they're kind of like under
It's
the city, but
dank.
not.
Yeah.
I posted a couple links. I don't know if you guys have watched any of the videos, but one from Jan Spankmeyer and one from the Brothers Quay.
Well, pull them up and share your screen real quick, Jeffrey.
Okay. I will. I always forget we can share.
Yeah,
Sharing is
I've
caring.
allowed sharing. Yeah.
Sharing is caring. All right. Give me 1 second. Can you see that?
Nope.
I've done this before. Oh, there it is.
Oh, here we go.
Cool.
Mhm. Huh. Interesting. Oh, that guy's animated really, really lifelike.
Ugh.
Oh my gosh, you know what it really reminds me of? Not this video specifically, but Madoka reminded me of that cartoon that used to come on Saturday morning.
Okay.
What is it? What is it?
Robot chicken?
Yeah, Robot
No.
Chicken.
No,
okay.
it was a girl. It was a girl, and she was always curmudgeoned because nobody liked her.
Mm.
Oh, she had freckles. Damn it. What is her
Oh,
name? What is the name of that show?
I think I know what you're talking about. This one's classic. Crocodiles excerpt. Let's jump around. But you can kind of like this feeling of like stark. I don't know, the music especially really enhances the vibe of this.
Angela Anaconda.
Oh yeah.
That's Madoka.
I have no memory of Angela Anaconda.
What? Oh my god, it was so weird. I loved it. But it was on Nickelodeon.
Huh.
Yeah, how the inanimate objects move I mean, the whole like all the stop motion animation. I guess yeah, there is a lot of that in the witches part.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage you to kind of watch some more of this on your own. Very macabre.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of like a really creepy version of Alice in Wonderland that I watched
Yeah,
once. I think
I
it's a Russian one.
I bet you it's from the animator that worked on this, or Sion Svankmajer. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Mhm,
cool.
mhm.
Cool.
Anyway, I'll stop that. Bam.
Yeah, I see what you mean. That Madoka is clearly drawing a lot of influence from this old timey animation style.
Mhm. That doesn't mean that the majority will appreciate the art, I guess, if that makes sense.
I dropped a link for Angela Anaconda in the chat.
So where do you want to pick up? Do we want to?
Well, we just covered settings,
Mhm.
neo-noir, a little bit. You know, I think one of the main things that Chu talks about is Sayaka. A lot of this paper is about Sayaka's struggle because one of the neo-noir themes that they touch upon is how how like people struggle after like the intentional abandonment of moral idealism,
Mm-hmm.
and like how and a lot of the paper centers around how Sayaka changes throughout um throughout the series, which I mean I don't think is terribly long, but it is a pretty big chunk, and I never really thought about Madoka being centered on Sayaka's story.
Yeah, I think for like I don't first watch, and obviously the show is literally called Madoka Magica, but
Mhm.
the second watch through is Sayaka's the only one that they focus on that actually kind of goes through a struggle. Like Madoka, I feel like it has like the ideal life inside of this world. She, while she's like still grappling with things like her friends dying and her friends changing, she herself kind of like gets babied through the whole situation. People like hold her hand. They're like, no, Madoka, you can't do this. Like, you need to not be a magical girl. You need to save whoever you are right now. It needs to be saved because you're a good person and whatever. Whereas like Sayaka like made the decision to be a magical girl on feelings that I think anyone at that age would be a magical girl for, and then has to kind of come to terms with what that meant after the fact. Like she knew what the consequences were for making that decision, but it wasn't like fully realized until she actually made the decision and then had to live with what happens after. So I think Sayaka is probably like more of the main character than Madoka. Like Madoka obviously becomes what she becomes, but um it's like they really focus on Sayaka's struggles with everything.
Uh, I would argue that Homura is the main character, and Madoka is the lens by which we view Homura's actions.
I guess, but you only get to know Homura in the last like 3 episodes.
Yeah.
But
We're
she's still the
experiencing Homura
primary.
just
She's the
like
primary
Madoka.
driver. She's the primary driver of the story.
Well, she's the primary driver of Madoka's existence, but I don't think of the story.
Oh, okay. I guess that's true. That's fair. Sayaka's grappling with morality is very interesting, and the paper makes some good analysis on the scene where Sayaka turns into a witch when she's on the train and sees these two guys, I guess, talking very misogynistically, and then Sayaka takes a step back and is like, wait, why am I struggling to defend this city and to be some great champion of justice when the city itself is such a piece of shit anyway? It's not really worth protecting. I have sacrificed myself, for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this despair that turns her into being a witch. That she feels despair that she gave up her life to fix the guy's hand so he could become return to being a violin player, but that doesn't bring the kind of emotional intimacy that she was hoping that it would.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Yeah.
she decides, well, I'm going to make the best of it by being this great champion of justice. Then she sees that the city itself is, imperfect and corrupt in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the meaning of any of her actions?
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to grapple with. But also, as I watch it this time through, I'm very like, you people make the dumbest wish type decisions. This is like, I would not be making the wishes that these people make.
You're also not a 13-year-old girl, Dan.
Yeah.
If I was 13 and the only person that I cared about was always like sick and like could not do the thing that he wanted to do, and I didn't have any sort of like talent to do what he was doing, like I would absolutely make that decision.
Well, I'm not saying it's bad for her to wish to fix that guy's hands. I'm saying that she needs to create a wish that's a compound sentence that covers, all the possibilities. Because it's like what mommy said. It's like what mommy said. What are you really after?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really looking to altruistically fix this guy, or what are you really looking for is for him to love you?
Right.
And so, and you could probably have both depending on how you phrase the sentence.
Would that be two wishes then? I want to fix his hand and make him love me.
Well, I don't know, because they don't really explore the limits of phrasing of these wishes. But I'm just saying that if I was gonna make a wish, I'd fucking basically have a lawyer look at this shit and see if there's any other like weird possibilities that I'm not anticipating. I don't want I want to be the fastest person, and then the monkey's paw goes and breaks everybody else's legs. I'm saying
Yeah.
I want to be the fastest person by virtue of my own personal strength that now surpasses the strength of all other people around me, but not so much that it inconveniences my life. You got to be real specific.
Yeah, you do, but I feel like QB doesn't want them to know that they need to be specific.
Yeah, I think
no. He's very manipulative the whole time.
Well, and so I have some real question about that, because I'm very sympathetic to QB's idea that it's not that he doesn't withhold information, it's just nobody ever asks.
Yeah.
So he just never brings it up.
Yeah.
And I guess technically that's manipulative, but I'm kind of blaming the girls a little bit here. They should ask more questions. If
I can't believe you are
me,
siding with QB.
Blame the 13-year-old girls and not the alien from space that's gaslighting these little girls.
Yeah. I think like one of the things that this paper does that really illustrates how malicious QB is just like how patriarchal he is too.
Yeah,
and like
that was an interesting angle I hadn't thought of before.
That's so funny. And I didn't really think that, but like I definitely knew that QB was like up to no good. They always close up on his face all the time, and it's so blank and it's always the same, and it's so like the way he speaks is so matter of fact, like, you dumb girls, like you should already know this information. This is very interesting.
Yeah, the whole talk about comparing, how humans treat each other, or rather how we treat animals as livestock, and he's not any different. That what they're doing is not any different necessarily, except that, like it's lack of sympathy or empathy
Yeah, I
what
think
we
in the
do.
yeah, I think like it's kind of an abuse of that rational thought though, and kind of like malicious utilitarianism. Um, because he presents this information to Madoka and is like, yeah, this is how it is. Like, duh, like you should just accept it. And I think that one of the points that the paper makes that I think is really interesting is how QB kind of like takes these women's labor for granted, but rejects their claim to knowledge because they're like too emotional. And like that's kind of like the whole point. I mean, he's harvesting them,
Yeah,
and
he wants the emotion. He needs the emotion for them to turn into the things that create energy for his like
He,
life.
he needs that drama.
yeah.
He
Yeah, but
does.
only women can be emotional, right?
Right, exactly. Like, why go after, and he says it so explicitly, like, oh, well, these are the perfect vessels for all this emotional power, and like,
How
what? Like,
what's the little boy's name? That little boy was a little too emotional for me. He
I'm just saying
could
that,
have been a
you know,
magical girl.
if he needs the energy of emotion, just plant me in front of a TV when that Grey's Anatomy season finale with the plane crash is
there you
playing.
Oh,
We'll
go.
Lord.
see how emotional men can be.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the tech in here because we're all about biohacking on this podcast.
Okay, so I know that nobody really likes this show, but there's this anime that came after Madoka called Magical Girl Raising Project, where it's kind of like the same kind of thing, except for the way that they are introduced to the magical world is through a cell phone game. And they play the game, and when they unlock enough points in the game, they are like magically chosen to like become a magical girl and go into the world and defeat other magical girls. I forget how they phrase it, but um they interact with like smartphones because it's like a little bit later. I don't feel like there were like smartphones in when 2011 when this anime was, right? When was Madoka? 2011,
2010, 2011,
2010.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So the tech isn't like cell phones, but like we were talking about before, the desks that come out of the the ground, like.
Mm.
And I guess we could talk a little bit about like the magic that they're interacting with is pretty similar to Wonder Egg.
Mhm.
Everything's encapsulated in like little tiny like Victorian looking orbs.
Yeah. Well, the soul gem was another thing where, I kind of don't side with QB, but is he really that wrong? Your soul gets, separated from your physical body, and like, I don't know, how much of a difference does that really make?
Well, and he doesn't even really acknowledge like a spiritual level of the soul. It's just this bundling of nerves that you just
Yeah, as he
kind of like
says,
Rip
put
yeah.
out
in a
of
little
people.
ball.
Yeah.
And I think like this is a really cool aspect of this is the turning point in Sayaka's story, is like she finds out that she is not really a person anymore, not in the way that can ever expect that violinist to love her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's caught between well, what was the paper saying? Like I don't remember.
I
I
was
don't
just
remember.
looking at it too.
Shit. Where was it? Well, I had it highlighted, but I
Page
lost it.
124.
Is it? Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, she's caught between the demands of being a magical girl and being a woman in a patriarchal society. And she can't. Yeah, caught between like this sort of this midpoint where like her body isn't hers anymore and it is being exploited. And the wish that created all this energy actually doesn't really mean much anymore because it can't be fulfilled or granted. It's really sad to think about it like that. And this all comes about through the realization of this, or through this, the soul gems. What an interesting piece of tech, though. I think it's so cool to like think about, like you were saying, Dan, just like this little piece is like all you are, and your body is just a cyborg. Like, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Sad though, but real neat.
Yeah, and the way they find out is Madoka takes Sayaka's soul gem and throws it off the bridge.
Yeah.
And then she instantly like falls down dead. Her eyes are like lifeless. And that's when everyone, even like even the girls, Kyoko, who have been magical girls for however long they've been magical girls, find out that the soul gem actually is like your life force, and if it's away from your body more than 100 meters, you are technically dead. But it doesn't matter that you need to know this information, because most of the time your soul gem's going to be on your person anyway. So
yeah, that wasn't in the instruction manual.
Yeah.
And now that Kyoko's been brought up in conversation, I thought she was a kind of interesting character herself. Or rather, there's parts. How did her dad find out that she's a magical girl?
I think she told him.
Yeah, I think she told him.
I think she was like,
okay,
bitch, here I am. This is me.
I also thought it was like her harsh attitude about food was kind of shocking to me in the moment. You know, when she tosses an apple to Sayaka, and Sayaka is like, fuck your apple, and tosses it away. And then Kyoko like starts choking her, like grabs her and is like, don't you ever waste food.
I know.
Yeah, and you know,
it's a regular Sanji.
Yeah, and I guess I find that like as I grow older, I find that attitude so very off-putting. You know, I guess I was sympathetic to it when I was younger, and like, yeah, I understand how, you know, people have trauma in their lives that informs their attitudes and behavior, and but it's kind of the same thing as like global warming, and being like, oh, you know, if only you rode your bike to work, then we wouldn't have global warming. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if like one or two people randomly, like the amount of greenhouse gas from your commute to work is motherfucking minuscule compared to like 7 giant factory farms and 8 major corporations on the planet Earth that are responsible for like 95% of this shit. So there's no reason to blame any one single individual for not riding their bike to work in an appropriate manner. You know, like that's not what's causing the structural problems of the world. You know, and in the same way, it's like, yo, if Sayaka tosses that apple, that's not going to save people from starving to death. You know, like it's got that her relation, whatever she does with that apple has nothing to do with the structural problems of food distribution in this world. It has no impact on anyone anywhere. So there's no reason to get mad about like, oh, you like tossed your you know, like instead of taking leftovers home, you like toss them in the trash. Like, it literally doesn't fucking matter. Like,
well, it's like it just flies in the face of Kyoko's whole like raison to
well, that's true too.
Etra.
Etra. Because she's just like, no, fuck all y'all, I'm gonna live for myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I mean, I think like the apple is pretty obvious symbolism, since it's in a church, since the scene is set in a church.
Yeah, this is true.
And it's like, oh, do you accept my knowledge? Do you accept my point of view? Like, are you going to live for yourself? And Sayaka has to choose between her own selfish desires and this like wish that's she thinks is benign, but is not actually benign. And so she's forced to choose this path that's righteous and that she feels is righteous, and ultimately leads her to her doom.
Yeah, the author compares altruism and egoism. I thought that was interesting. And then somehow compares it to capitalism.
Yeah,
Capitalism
I didn't.
structure.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, he like they kind of go into this drivel of capitalism after talking about like the apple and like throwing away apples and like food waste, and like I don't really see how this connects to capitalism, but
Yeah.
okay.
He says, yeah, like the workers, Sayaka was exploited for the benefits of others. It's like,
I mean, it doesn't.
It's
I
kind
don't
of a
think
stretch, but
yeah, like the context of that is not it. But in the show, she is doing that. She is sacrificing herself for the good of others, and whether she is okay with that or not is what she is struggling with, because she wants all of the things, but also, wants everyone to be okay. It's like you can't have both.
Yeah, she should have framed her wish as like, I want that guy's hands to be fixed, and when they get fixed, he should attribute that positivity to me, so he falls in love with me.
Dan's like, this entire anime would have been fixed if Sayaka just
If they
wished
just
for
knew what
love.
to wish for effectively. You know?
How about Madoka's wish? I wish to erase all witches.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
most
that's
simple
cool.
fucking wish. I don't think she was smart enough to think about that in the long term. I think it just happened that she broke the code. She tapped into the matrix and figured out something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was a tremendous ending and to the show, and a great fucking wish, and there's truly, when we think about selfless wishes, maybe this is a key difference between Madoka and Sayaka. Sayaka attempts to make a selfless wish, but feels a lot of despair when she doesn't get what she wants out of her selfless act, because ultimately her
because it
real
wasn't
goal,
selfless. I think that's
I think she made a selfless wish even though her goal was egotistical, or maybe to say this better, she made an altruistic wish when her real priorities were egoistic.
Yeah.
And that discrepancy caused despair. But Madoka makes an altruistic wish that is purely out of altruism, and that is what makes it flourish so well.
And then then the witches are just replaced by wrath, by these things called wraths.
Yeah.
And I
instead
guess
they
this
just
is
disappear.
I guess this is, I mean, they don't explain what wraths are.
No,
They don't explain what wraths are in the movie either. We can have some kind of base assumption that the wraths are supposed to be negative feelings or like negative energies in this world, but the crux of this is that the wraths are not magical girls. The magical girls are no longer being turned into witches. They are now just kind of disappearing. They just dematerialize or whatever. So they have the hope of magical girl, but none of the despair of the other side of the coin, none of the despair of the witch. And the idea is that Madoka like comes to them like a goddess and soothes their ailing spirit and brings them up to like the great one or whatever. And I thought that was really, really good, and it made sense to me. I did start to wonder on this watch, when they described that witches are just like propagating negativity and negative mental energy in this world. It kind of made me feel like, I don't know, do you really need to like sacrifice your life to fight negative mental energy? Like, just let people be depressed for a couple of days. I don't know. It's like a lot of like in terms of utility, it's like a marginal amount of positive utility by spreading positive mental energies into the world for like really like horrifically bad, treatment of a couple of individuals. But like, is it really worth the sacrifice of these individuals throwing their lives away just so everybody can be like 5% happier in their daily lives because there's not a local witch that's like putting negative mental energy into their minds? Like, just let the witch just be, man. And that's how I felt with Madoka. Madoka's like, well, I shouldn't become a magical girl. I don't really want to be a magical girl. It's like, then stop fucking going on the rounds with all of your friends.
Me too. I'm
Yeah,
like, bitch,
stop
stay
watching
home
all of
then.
your friends die.
Boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes. I was
Think-
thinking the same thing. And then
Yeah.
I feel like QB is supposed to be this like this bad guy, this like person or like character that you're supposed to hate because he's like technically doing this to the girls, and I'm like, I can't really hate him. Like, the things that he's saying, he's like, nobody's questioning him, nobody's like, hey, but like, how does this actually work?
That's what I'm saying.
They
That's
are just
what I'm
like
saying.
accepting what he's saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Because if someone were to, if I found this like weird looking creature and it started talking to me about magical girl stuff, I feel like I would have no reason not to believe what he was saying, because that's not normal. That's like not something that would normally happen in reality.
But that's the point, though, because a lot of these magical girl shows are just like that. These girls meet this creature, this mascot, and they just accept their destiny to become a magical girl, like without actually questioning anything. That is the trope. That is the trope of all of these shows.
Well, and I think that like also a point of this show is to show like the rebellion against that system.
Yeah.
Even
That's
though
true.
that most of the rebellion ends in despair and death.
I feel like Homura is the one that's rebelling the most against it. She's
Yeah, me
fighting the
too.
hardest for
Homura is my favorite. She's
Homura's your favorite? I really
Yeah.
liked her too. She is my
Yeah, she's my favorite too.
I like her and Sayaka.
I like Sayaka's outfit.
I feel like in real life I would want to hang out with Sayaka, but I thought Homura had far and away the most interesting story and interesting emotional arc.
Especially because you get to see her in all these different iterations of herself and how she's grown over this period of this. Only like Madoka happens over like a month, and she has to relive that month for however long, you know what I mean? So like her growth that you get to see at the end is like crazy.
Well, and it also kind of illustrates like the dynamic between how much information QB has and withholds from these girls, and then how much effort it takes for one girl to know a sliver of the knowledge that he holds. And it's like she does all this stuff on her own, and she uses a ton of like science to do it. She has like statistical methods. She like makes new weapons, and she's a total badass.
Has anybody watched the TV show Dark on Netflix?
I think I watched the first episode, and he gets goes into the woods.
Yeah, there's like a time travel element where he gets and he has to go back in time. I mean, eventually he's basically trying to save his family and his lover, his girlfriend, and it's basically his whole family. But he realizes after doing it over and over and over again, he's got to find a break, or crack in the not a crack in the wood, but like some sort of weakness where the ultimate outcome is the world being destroyed by a nuclear blast. But that's the gist of the entire show. And I don't know, it has similar themes, but it's a very complex show. It's 3 seasons long. I highly recommend it to y'all. It's a German series, by the way. So if you don't like, it's dubbed and it's in subtitled form, so you can watch both.
Yeah, I thought time traveling was handled very, very well in Madoka Magica.
Yeah.
I think time traveling, as we've discussed on this podcast, there are moments when time traveling starts to fray at the seams. It doesn't always make sense. But I thought this was a pretty sensible and approachable way of thinking about time travel.
I think because there wasn't any, like a lot of time travel have like a save point where you can't go back to, like once you've gotten past a certain point and you can't go back. Where this is just kind of like a time loop. She like lives out the timeline and then changes it at the very end, only to go back to the beginning of the same timeline in a different, but she keeps all of the knowledge of the first timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it worked so well. It's not like a save point, like a save game kind of thing. Like it's one loop over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really well articulated dynamic, was the way that Madoka's magical girl potential continues to climb with every iteration through the loop.
Yeah.
Because you're putting more and more emotion and more effort into Madoka. So it's like with every loop, Homura, comes back. She places more emotion onto Madoka, which increases her importance to kind of the workings of fate and the workings of the timeline. Increases her magical girl capability. I wondered if that also increased the power of the Walguspurg. Walguspurg, is that right? If the Walguspurg was also, they didn't say anything about that in the show, but I wondered if the same logic would hold, because the Walguspurg would be, the
it's indirectly related to Madoka's emotion.
Exactly.
Because it's all just thermodynamics, right?
Like that's what they say. Yeah,
that's what they say.
But Walguspurg is of a similar level of importance, because it is the witch that kills Madoka every time. So does the Walguspurg also get stronger with every iteration, because Homura continues to fixate on it, and it continues to play such an important role in fate? Or does Walguspurg maybe get less powerful because Homura is keeps wishing for it to get weaker?
I would assume that it would be getting more powerful, but the amount that Madoka's potential would keep growing would keep it kind of at bay.
Word. Yeah.
Because Homer is putting, it's like if you can't actualize how much an energy is, then you would never know exactly how big that energy could be. But because Homer sees it every single time, and every time it gets harder and harder for her to defeat, and she has to figure out different bombs and things to make to try and defeat it, that she ultimately ends up not defeating it and going back to another timeline. And now that she's already actualized how much energy it might continue to grow, because she's actualizing it instead of just thinking oh man, that might be, I don't know what it's going to be.
And as you say that, I think there's evidence for that in the show. And so far as in the early iterations through the loop, Madoka really struggles with Walguspurg. By later iterations of the loop, Madoka becomes a magical girl only during that struggle, and she one-shots the Walguspurg.
She one-punch mans it.
Yeah, she one-punch mans it, and then becomes a witch herself, and is set to destroy the planet Earth in 10 days. And so, we see, that's true. We see Madoka gaining capability and gaining possibility at a far faster rate than Walguspurg would be getting stronger. So it's true.
Yeah, the episode 11 fight scene was really great. The sequence where Homura is she pulls that artillery truck out of the water, and it has shaft written on it, and it just starts shooting the rockets. I don't know. There's some really cool scenes, and I think that if you think about the amount of action in comparison to dialogue and drama that's built around, I feel like the dialogue outweighs the action in the show,
Mhm.
which was surprising to me.
Mm.
I thought there'd be a lot more fight scenes.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that.
So traditionally, magical girl shows are each are very episodic. Each episode, there's a big bad that they have to fight until probably the end 4 or 5 episodes where they have a big bad that they've struggled to try and defeat and haven't been, and then ultimately defeat by the end of the show. So I think that's where that trope kind of gets played out in this series.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Thanks, Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
I mean,
Has anyone watched the Crystal, Sailor Moon Crystal remake?
I did. It's terrible.
You don't like
I
it?
don't know. The art style is great. Well, I watched it. I watched the first like 2 episodes while it was airing. So I
Mhm.
don't know if I think they fixed it for the Blu-ray release, but yeah, the animation was crazy. They were trying to pump it out too fast for the art style.
It's a little janky.
No janky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To go back to Madoka, I really like the dynamic that Homura has to continue to fight endlessly, because if she ever gives up, she'll become a witch. It's like if she loses, then the world gets destroyed. If she gives up, then she dies and becomes a witch. So the only way for her to survive is to just keep endlessly trying until
Mhm.
she manages to win. I thought that was a very compelling set of circumstances.
Especially
Even though
because
it's Madoka who really resolves the situation.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like Madoka couldn't have handled all of the tension that Homura actually like shouldered and continues to shoulder, because she is such a good girl. Like no matter what, she continues to fight, and even though she knows the outcome, and like not any of the other magical girls like actually, I guess in a way it's kind of like defeating QB and defeating that system, where she just like continues. She's not gonna succumb to like whatever her soul gem is going to do. She's like only going to do what she's meant to do. Did that sentence make sense? I
Yeah.
don't know. She's the only magical girl that matters in this show because she did it the best.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Madoka's wish is that it is pretty selfless, but it's also like the target of her wish is not anything that's really happening to her in her world, like direct, like it's not like about another person. It's not saving another person. It's not like I want $1 million. It's like her wish is like so unlike anybody else's wish. And she like directly goes for history, like, oh, I don't want any of this to ever happen, so much so that she creates a new scientific law, and like she has to become this other person, this she has to become the fabric of the new reality to even to support that scientific law of existing. And
She becomes a concept,
yeah,
as the show says. Loses her individuality.
which is kind of sad too, because it doesn't, that she's still in service of something, but her sacrifice allows new possibilities to be created. Which I guess is the other theme of this paper, is hope in the future. And like, what does it mean to have hope? What does it mean to have a future? And at the very end, I mean, Chu kind of like challenges the readers by asking like, what would it seriously take, the desire, and to what would it be to like really transform your society? think it's a great question to ask. I don't know if Madoka can answer that. That seems like a pretty rough question to ask Madoka Magica, but there's certainly elements of that question in the show.
Yeah, because Homura's wish is to go back in time so that she can stop Madoka from doing it, from becoming a magical girl, so that she doesn't have to bear the burden that all the other girls have had to bear. But and Sayaka's wish is for literally somebody else. We don't know what the blonde-haired girl,
Mommy.
Yeah, we don't know what mommy's wish.
Well, we don't know specifically, but mommy's wish was basically to survive the car accident that she was in.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So it was for herself. And
Yeah.
then Kyoka was for her father and her family. So Madoka's wish is, like you said, completely unlike anything else. And her wish kind of does unravel like what the question was asking. What was the question?
Oh, the question is asking, like, I mean, what would it take and what would it be to really transform your society?
Yeah. So not that Madoka thought about it, but she is interrupting the system.
Yeah. I mean, the nature of her wish transforms the entire like law that QB and the other incubators rely on. And the paper argues that this really isn't revolutionary. It just kind of reforms the system, because as we see in the last scenes, there's still magical girls fighting. And I think maybe ideally there wouldn't be any magical girls that would have to fight.
Yeah, but see, and QB has said that they've been intervening since before written history. So to take them out of the equation isn't an option. So there has to be this this magical girl incubator kind of like relationship for even the world to exist, for people to continue existing. So like if Madoka wished for the system to not even be a thing, if she wished for magical girls and all of that to go away, she's also taking away her family that she left behind and the people that she loved, because it wouldn't exist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So is there a wish that would make you become a magical girl?
What would I wish for?
I'd be having you write my wish.
Yeah, Dan. Write all of our wishes for us.
Yeah, I would not make a wish to become a magical girl. I don't think I don't think there's something in my life that I want so desperately that I want to sacrifice, like my time and my energy in that way. Like, I don't want to live my life battling witches.
Being in this weird surrealist art environment.
Yeah. It sounded like, you gain something, but then do you even have the time to enjoy it? Like, all of your life is based around battling these giant monsters and trying not to die. Like,
that's what I thought about the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, they make this wish and their wish comes true, but like they, at this point in time, after they make their wish, they can't do anything. Like, they can't be normal people anyway. Is your wish that important that you can't even be like who you are, whoever you're going to become?
Yeah, maybe you got to just write it into the wish. Like, I wish that, like,
I wish to be
such
magical.
and such happens and I do not become a magical girl.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make this wish, and I wish for something awesome for myself, and also that I don't have to work ever. Thank you.
Yeah.
The real world comparison would be fighting Al Qaeda. It's like the war on terror. The idea that we can eventually wipe this group off the face of the earth, but yet like it still perpetuates a cycle of more violence and debt. Sorry, didn't mean to bring it home, but that's kind of our real world comparison. Being 9/11, the memorial of 9/11 20 years later.
Yeah. Well, and I think also making a war on terror like a concept
Mhm.
is kind of you can shoot yourself in the foot real easily because what is you're fighting a concept? Okay, well,
Mhm.
this is going to get really ugly.
Yeah, I mean, the real way to defeat terrorism is not through actual warfare, but through having a more nuanced and humane foreign policy. Yeah.
Why didn't you
Yeah.
just say love, Dan?
Yeah.
The real way
Fair enough.
to
Yeah.
fight terrorism is love.
Yeah.
Didn't you learn anything from One Piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Insert John Lennon's Imagine All the People.
Mhm.
Well, thanks for reading this 26-page paper with
Yeah,
me.
I thought it was very,
That's
very
great.
interesting.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good. Do we want to talk about what we didn't like about it?
Is
And I
there?
say this, there was nothing that I
already
didn't
said it.
like about it. Yeah,
already said
I thought it sounded like you guys didn't like it as much as I did, but I thought
Oh.
it was very insightful and well done, and I'm anxious to read more from this little academic journal.
I'm just not smart, Dan.
Are you saying we aren't excited about the show or the journal?
Well, it sounded like you guys were saying the journal was too pretentious and too full of jargon and too wordy.
Oh,
I think it was. I think it was very pretentious and jargony. It referenced a lot of philosophical concepts that I don't think interdisciplinary scholars would be familiar are going to all be familiar with. The way that it was cited is easy to follow. It's cited in Chicago style. But
Okay.
like with the footnotes, like it says 24
Yeah.
instead of like other ways that citations can be confusing. But it's also like super dry. I mean, I know that like some of you guys are like art school people, so I don't know if you've ever had to read film analysis or art analysis, but it can be really dry.
I mean, I haven't had to read it or write it, but I mean, I feel like, and then I don't feel like art school ever sets you up to critique someone's work in that like academic way.
I disagree, but only because we didn't navigate towards that focus, like the academic side of it, as a professor or as like an art critic.
Yeah, no.
But like when I took the film course that I took, we had to write reviews and sort of dissect film. So I kind of have that background, but I'm not a scholar or anything. But I think having that practice has enabled me to a little bit better understand or like kind of critique or analyze any kind of art in general. But I see I know what you mean, Amelia. It's not like we spent 4 years learning how to write these papers.
Yeah,
like 12-page essays.
I learned through experience. You know what I mean? Like by analyzing it myself. I don't know.
Yeah, but going back to Jan Svankmajer, like I wouldn't have known about Jan Svankmajer unless I took this course, like this animation course. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that like you kind of build upon a repertoire of things and knowledge. I'm not in any way saying that I'm like, skilled in this, but just saying like simply reading other people's, like reading this journal can kind of help you reflect on other things. Like they brought in Blade Runner, like that. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Which is one of my favorite films, and just like this dystopic world that I tend to gravitate towards in fiction. And Dune's coming out soon, so I cannot wait for that. Ooh, talk about sci-fi.
Yeah,
we gotta do a paper on that.
What I love about this paper is, first of all, that it exists. Like there is academic discourse about such an iconic anime, and a transformative anime, and it really opened me up to thinking like, well, what can I get more out of Madoka? Like I can talk about it at a surface level as a consumer, and what I liked and didn't like and for what reason, but really exploring like different kinds of themes is it tickles my brain, and I like it a lot. But it was kind of a slog to get through, and I think like at some point you do have to pull away a little bit from art analysis and art criticism and try to just enjoy the art for what it is and how it makes you feel. That's kind of the trap that I find myself getting into when I read analysis papers.
Kind of stated that our last episode about Hibane Renmai, and how and Dan was bringing this analysis into it. And for me personally, I didn't like it because I was like, well, it's open to interpretation. I think this is too much, right? But with this in comparison, this journal feels not more concrete, but I can what's the word? I don't know. I can just kind of take this writing. It feels more, maybe I'm not as biased with Madoka.
Well, because this is your first
personal.
watch through because of Madoka, where I feel like Hibane, you watched it, yourself. You took it upon yourself to watch it, and it was a personal thing for you watching it, which I think that every anime is personal. I think that's why we have the community that we have, and we talk about it in this way, is because everyone has their own personal connection to it. And when you bring other people's analysis into it that you don't personally have a connection to, it can seem biased in their perspective, and it's less likely for you to accept that that's what that's about. And I feel like that with a lot of things, like I like to take things really like at face value and not assume that the creators have like this immaculate plan of like what an anime is supposed to mean instead of like what it actually is. But reading people's analysis like this in a journal setting with like academic citations and stuff is kind of like really cool and different for me personally, just because I don't read stuff like this all the time. But yeah.
Well, that's the big difference, is this person. I don't know about the person you were referencing, Dan, in the last show, but this person seems to have the credentials at least to merit such a
I was
thoughtful
referencing some random ass person on the internet. So
well, and in that analysis that you brought up for is it Hanabi? How do you pronounce it?
Hibane.
Hibane. For Hibane, that critique was very cut and dry. X means this, Y means this, and it's like this. It's like, and I can see how that was off-putting for you, because I think like it should be open to interpretation, and you should be able to like get what you need out of that particular piece. And in this paper, I don't feel like the author is like saying, oh, this apple means this. I mean, even though he does a little bit, he does a little bit, but it's not the entire paper. It's like, let's explore some themes and how Madoka does that. And I think that's cool.
Well, then he asks questions. So he leaves it up to the reader to find out within themselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, pat on the back for us for choosing 2 animes back to back that incite such a discussion. Like, I feel like we've been getting really analytical lately.
I love it.
I highly recommend people read this journal. It's good.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Bring a dictionary. Bring a dictionary.
Seriously.
Like, you need a Google tab open.
Just don't get lost in the Wikipedia articles.
I just read a sentence and had to look up 2 things, and I'm like, dang it, did I even comprehend what the sentence was about?
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on again.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be
Yes,
here.
thank you, Christella.
I always enjoy talking to y'all.
Yay! I love when you're on, Christella.
We're gonna have you on like every other episode now.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, we'll
Because I
have
was
to-
like, yes, I have a journal for every episode.
Yeah. Do we have any final thoughts on Madoka Magica? I give this anime a 10 out of 10, and I'm gonna go update my Mal.
Oh
Give it a 10 out of 10.
You know what?
I only give
You
10
know
out
what?
of 10s on Mal. I'm gonna give this 10 out of 10.
He literally only does give 10 out of 10. So
Yeah.
well, okay. So my original self, when I watched it, gave this shit a 7.
Damn.
I know.
What the
I'm
fuck do
telling
you
you,
want out of anime?
I wanted something more apparently, but with my second watch, this show is so fucking good. Like, it's a 10 out of 10. I don't care. It is hyped for a reason, and if you haven't been watching Madoka because of how much hype there is around it, or you feel like it's something you can't get into, you can get into it. Even though I don't really like the art style, like, oh my gosh, the story and the substance is like 10 out of 10.
Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. Also, 10 out of 10, even though I don't rate any anime on Mal. I'm so afraid. Because it's like, oh, is this rating about my personal opinion or is it my objective opinion? I don't know.
Fair.
The show is so cool. I mean, the art style is so unique. It's not a cookie cutter anime. It explores so many themes, and you can really expand upon it in other mediums too. So I love it. Can't wait to rewatch it in 10 years.
And it doesn't explore the themes in like a super edgy, like over the top way, like pretty much every other deconstructed magical girl show has since.
Like a really hot anime boy with silver hair being like, and that's how they talk about, and it's like 3 minutes of exposition.
Yeah, I definitely am more of a fan of Gano Urobuchi, one of the creators of the show. He also did Psycho Pass, so I can see why I like both these shows. Not equally, but I
love Psychopaths.
It's a good show. But I want to go. This actually inspires me. I want to go back and watch some magical girl shows that I've missed. Because I wasn't even alive. But yeah, like classic shows. Even though they're not necessarily, I'm not the intended age demographic, but yeah, maybe I'll go back and actually rewatch Sailor Moon.
I hear the reboot is good.
As much as I give shit to Sailor Moon, like the original art style is cool as fuck, y'all. Like the 90s style of Sailor Moon is so cool and so iconic, and there's nothing like it, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so now everybody's got to go watch Madoka Magica Rebellion.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then get on the Discord and talk about how that completely negates our entire analysis of the TV show.
Damn.
That's the whole meta narrative.
Oh my gosh.
The TV show.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it tonight then.
It's crazy.
I started the newest season of Madoka, but I ran out of time. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about that, but as I watched some of it, maybe we can bring it up in discussion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is on Crunchyroll and Verve. So
yeah, like the one that's airing this season.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because there was one that aired in winter of last year too.
Well, I guess both. Yeah.
Dan, would you like to take us out? I liked how you did it the last time.
Goodbye, everybody.
No, you said I'm Dan. This is Amelia.
Oh.
That is Jeffrey. We are podcast and bye.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Dan.
Christella, is there anything you want to plug? Do you need to plug anything?
I only want to plug this website, animemangastudies.com.
Okay. Everybody
That's
go
it.
there. We'll leave it in the
Go
Discord.
there. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm Dan.
Hey,
We've got Geoff and Amelia.
hey.
We've got Christella.
Hey.
This was our podcast, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
That was good, Dan. Yay.
Goodbye.
See you in the next one.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed that episode of the Otaku Host Club podcast. If you want to be a part of the conversation or participate during episodes, hop on into our Discord server. The invite link should be in the show notes of wherever you're listening to this on. Or you can head on over to our website, otakuhostclub.com, where you'll find links to previous episodes, as well as our Instagram at Otaku Host Club, and our YouTube channel, where we put out video versions of episodes after they hit Spotify. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.